My name is Simon, and I live in London, and I was born in London. I actually reverted to Islam about 1990, I think it was, or 89, not too sure. And I'm living in London. I've worked in Saudi Arabia, and I've worked some time in the Gulf, in Abu Dhabi, LA, and I worked 5 years in Oman. In Muscat, which was quite a nice job. So then I returned to the UK in about 2003. So I grew up in London. I'm born in London, as I mentioned. And I always went to Catholic schools, primary school. And I went to school when I was about 14 to 18, to a school which is run by monks, actually. And they were quite strict, and they used to kind of beat us quite a lot. So the background was always quite strongly Catholic. I think nearly everybody in the school they didn't take the religion very seriously. That's my impression anyway. We used to be going to the church on Thursdays. Of course, was also Sunday, which is the compulsory in Catholic religion. So, I remember when I was about at primary school, about 10 or so, and the teacher was asking questions about Christianity. And I said, why are we born with original sin? You know, Adam is born with a sin and has to be baptized. And he said, well, because everybody's born with a sin. And I said, how can a baby be born with a sin? And then the teacher was a bit angry with me, and he said, well, don't ask these questions. So that was kind of like, I was, even at the age of maybe 10 or 11, I was kind of a bit of a rebel, you can say, really. And a bit later on, when, as you know, the Catholic religion is very hierarchical. They have, priests and bishops and monks and archbishops. And so I wonder why we need to have all this hierarchy, really. And it seemed almost like a career path for some people. So that was one thing which I was unsure about, why we needed to have all that hierarchy, and the Pope, of course, at the top. Well, I'm not an expert on Christianity. I have read some stuff, but I was never really one of these people that I know some of my friends who actually studied the Christianity, and were even going to become a priest. I know one or two of them who were on the way to becoming a priest. But they didn't, for some reason. They decided to change their mind. So I was never one of those. So I wouldn't pretend to have a huge knowledge of Christianity. Although, of course, when you're taught it from the age of 5 years old until 18, you're going to pick up a lot of information, But many things like, turning the blood, the wine and bread in the church, in the Mass rather, into the flesh and blood of Jesus Christ. I found this strange. It's called transubstantiation. Anyway, so many things were very strange to me. That didn't make sense, really. That sounded like a blood sacrifice to me. But so there's quite a few other things which didn't really add up. So as I said, I was working in the Emirates for some years, and I had some friends there, some Yemeni friends and some other nationalities, Palestinian and Jordan, and we used to talk about Islam and talk about religion in general, but they never once tried to push me, really. And even in the tea room in the hospital, people would start talking about fasting and some issues about this, that, the other. And I was kind of curious, but what's it all about? I remember a couple of the people in the pharmacy used to go off to pray in the afternoon, for example, and go for the Asr prayer, and come back smelling of cigarettes. So I said, hang on, have you been praying, or have you been or just having a quick cigarette? So then I started to do some exploration and reading about it. I was trying to prove them that they shouldn't go off and take a lunch, these smoking breaks, really, that were their smoking stroke prayer breaks. But anyway, I did some investigation and stuff, and became quite interested on the social aspect of Islam, such as how looking after elderly people, the importance of manners, violence, is not something that is encouraged at all, which is contrary to what I thought, because I thought Muslims were quite violent if you scratch the surface, but that's not quite true. And other things like inheritance laws, which are quite important. And divorce, of course. I mean, in the Catholic religion, divorce is, many countries still, they don't allow divorce. Although more and more now have realised that divorce is not something which should be forbidden. Anyway, so why is divorce? So divorce was allowed from day one, which seems to be common sense. They need contraception. I think there are situations where you need to have contraception. So this has been banned in the Catholic Church for centuries, which I couldn't see why would it be banned. Why would you want to? Anyway, so I did read a lot about that. Somebody did give me the Quran in English, which is the Yusuf Ali version. And I can't think of anything which stuck out massively, but all of it made sense in the sense that there was nothing in there which I found very weird. And I think with the Quran, you have to read it again and again, and the translations sometimes are not that great. So the notes with the Yusuf Ali there, I think a lot of it is a kind of biblical language, which kind of put me off a bit. But then I discovered there's other versions, Muhammad Mohsin and others, which is much more clear English. One thing is also you can start reading the notes in Yusuf Ali, and the notes are huge, and you get distracted by reading notes, and that's another issue. The main thing was I used to ask people, is there anything in the Quran which you find contradictory or not making sense? And nobody ever said to me, well, I don't believe in that bit, So there's consistency that there was no errors. So it seemed odd that something was which was, I suppose, written by one person 1,400 years ago in the middle of the desert could be so error-free, really. So the question is it divine or is it written by one person? That's what it boils down to, isn't it, really? And I kind of concluded that it was unlikely to be written by a human being. Yeah, so I was reading background information quietly, really, for maybe 3 or 4 years, actually, just really as an interest. And then I remember one day I used to go down to the hotels sometimes in Abu Dhabi, and a lot of my friends were drinking. And I remember one time somebody had a huge argument. They got a bit drunk and they had an argument. And I remember thinking the atmosphere was very negative, So I came back home and I got talking to a friend of mine who's a Palestinian, actually. And so we were talking about alcohol. The Quran says some good things in alcohol, but the bad is worse and bad. So and I wondered why alcohol would be banned completely. But then I started to think, wherever I go and people get drunk, the atmosphere starts nicely. People are happy. But nearly always it turns into a horrible kind of a negative black feeling. And a lot of people, their friendships split up because of, they say something stupid. Anyway, so I remember talking through the night with this friend of mine. And then he sort of said, oh, well, you sound like you know more about Islam than me. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go to bed. This was like 1 o'clock, 2 a.m. And I said, I'll wake up. Tomorrow was a Friday, the day off. So I said, if I want to become Muslim, I still feel that something inside me, then I'll do it. Okay. So anyway, so then I woke up morning, and for some strange reason, I kind of felt, right, why hang around? This is, either you do it or you don't. And actually, I did meet Ahmed Deedat as well in the hotel, not in the bar. Okay. So, but he didn't influence it. That was quite early, on my earlier time. A friend of mine knew him then. He was staying in LA, and I met him. But anyway, so I woke up in the morning, and I thought, right, this is it. Deep breath. I phoned up my friend, Palestinian friend, and so he said, you sure? Are you sure? I said, yeah, come, let's just do it. Come, let's stop messing around. Anyway, so he came over, and a couple of other friends came. Gosh, this was probably about 80. Sorry, 93, 92, yeah. Yeah, so then he called another couple of my friends, like some Yemeni friends I had, and they came over and said, are you sure you want to do it? You want to think about it? I said, no, there's enough discussion. So then they said, oh, you got to have a shower. I said, why? No, you have a proper shower. So, okay. So then I had a shower, and then we went to one of these imams that they knew. And the prayer time actually was starting at 12 o'clock for the Friday Jummah. And so, you know, he just basically told me the words to say, and I did it. Sure. And it was it, really. That was it. So, yeah, I felt very strange, actually. And then we went straight down to the Jummah prayer. Yeah. So it was kind of like, I felt like a tingle down my spine, you know. It was kind of a strange feeling, you know. Yeah, quite emotional, really. I mean, everybody's lovely and hugging me, and so, you know. So then we went to the Jummah prayer and everything. Anyway, some of my friends, they said, there's one thing you have to do now. And I said, what's that? He said, you have stuff in your house, in your flat, which you've got to get rid of. I said, what's that? He said, you have bottles of alcohol. So this was kind of just after Christmas, and I had my mum and brother came up, so I had some alcohol in the house. So I said, okay, let's sell it and then give the money to charity. No, you can't do this. Money is haram. I said, well, you know, let's give it away then. Just give it away to friends. And he said, no, you have to destroy it. So I was thinking, well, this is quite expensive. Anyway, so then we had to put on rubber gloves and pour it down the toilet, you know, so that was a little ceremony. Well, actually, it was lucky we didn't sell it or we didn't give it away. Because I think if you want to cut off something, you have to do it in a kind of a brutal way. Yeah. It's like my auntie, she smoked cigarettes for 60 years. And then one day she decided she had enough, watched TV, and then she threw them in the fire. That was it. And one packet of cigarettes threw in the fire. So that makes it kind of cut or makes it easier. If you say, oh well, I'll finish all my beer and stuff, and then I'll stop drinking. It doesn't work really. You have to do a symbolic thing really. Yeah. So I went back to work on the that time. It was the weekend was Thursday, Friday, so it was back to work on Saturday. And I did actually tell my boss. He was sitting in his desk, and I told him straight away. I said, "Oh, by the way, Epkin was he was a Christian Lebanese, and strangely enough, he said, oh no, I'd love to do that, but I can't because I'll be killed." So anyway, but my next time I went to the UK on my leave, I said to my brother, I was meant to talk to you, and he goes, okay, let's go down to the pub. So anyway, we went down there and had him and his wife actually. So I told my brother in the pub, and because he was saying, have a pint of beer. I said, no, I'll just have orange juice. Orange juice? Are you ill? So I said, no, I don't. I'll tell you why later on. Then I did explain to him the whole thing. And he thought it was quite amusing. I mean, this is before 9/11. And so I think a lot of people at that time, luckily, alhamdulillah, they didn't have this massive negativity against Islam. So people thought it was like, I said, oh, you're vegetarian now. So that was the kind of, that they didn't know anything really. So my mum was fine, and she'd been to the Middle East for a holiday 2 or 3 times actually. So she had heard the prayer, the adhan. So people said, what's the adhan? So then she thought, oh, that's not. So she had quite a strong spirituality. And I don't think she was particularly attached to the Catholic religion, but she did have in herself a spirituality, definitely. So she was okay, and she said, well, I'm glad that you have something, because she knew that I didn't have much interest in Catholic religion, so her view was something better than nothing, Some of my aunties and uncles, they thought it was all a bit, strange, but they thought it was quite funny. They didn't think it was a bad thing. Made lots of jokes, so that was okay, yeah. I mean, Britain people don't really, they find it kind of like a curiosity, really. It's much more difficult if somebody's in India and they're from a strong Hindu background, or they say living in other countries like Pakistan, if they become Christian, that would be life-threatening, you know. But I think in the West, religion is way down on people's priorities. Yeah, and they kind of expect you're going through a phase, you know. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, next week you'll be Buddhist, you know. So yeah, it's not really considered to be serious. The only kind of negative reaction was actually one of my colleagues from work in the Middle East. He was Lebanese Christian, and we used to play chess. So just after this period, he came over and he said, "We'll play chess." And then when we play chess, we have beer, you know. So he looked in the fridge and said, "Where's your beer?" And I said, "Well, I told you I'm become Muslim now. I don't have to." "Oh, it's true." He said, "We didn't believe you. We thought you were just making a joke, you know." And I said, "Well, you know, you can think of it as a joke or whatever." And then he was shouting at me and got very upset, actually. You know. And we didn't play chess that evening. He just ran out the door, walked out the door. And then when his friends were praying, and it was kind of they actually went on the roof to pray. And it was quite a beautiful thing to watch, you know, and I sat there observing them as the sunset's going down. And then the next day he knocked on my door and said, "Come on, iftar." I said, "How are we talking about? We had iftar yesterday. Why are you doing it again?" He said, "It's for 30 days. I said, "Well, every day?" So I thought it was like a one-day thing, you know. That's how much I knew. And then to see that kindness, you know, the amount of money they spent on food, and the care and preparation was quite astonishing, really. Very touching, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, my mother actually, as I mentioned, she went to Abu Dhabi, and she went to Oman a few times, you know. And she used to ask lots of questions. She was quite elderly. She was 80s, nearly 80 when she went over there. But anyway, she broke her hip, and I came back to the UK eventually. And I remember we had one friend from the mosque, and called Elizabeth, who sadly passed away now, and she'd become a Muslim like 20 years earlier. And she wanted to go to Hajj. So to make a long story short, she said to me, would I come with her to the mosque to get a certificate, to do the Shahada again, get a certificate so she can go to Hajj. I said, yeah, of course. So I said to my mum, you know, I'm going down to the mosque with Elizabeth next Saturday. And my mum said, oh, what for? I said, well, she's going to get a certificate, you know, to do the Shahada, to get a certificate, to go to Hajj. So my mum said, is it like a big celebration or a big thing you do? I don't know, you just have to go. And the imam, who's a priest, is there, you just say these words, and then that's it. You know, it takes about 3 minutes. So, whereas in the Catholic religion, you to be baptized, you go in the water, and you know it's all this. So she said, you know, so anybody can do it. I said, of course, yeah, anybody can become a Muslim. It just takes a few minutes, as long as you have 2 witnesses, I believe it is. Anyway, so then she said, well, so I could do it. I said, what? You can do it. So I said, well, you could. What, do you want to? She said, oh, okay, what do you think? I said, well, you know, I mean, do you seriously want to do it? You know, I mean, it never really occurred to me, I mean, strange really, that she'd ever want to, you know, convert, or revert rather. Anyway, so she came with us and Elizabeth down to the mosque, and I had written down on the card the words, you know, and she practiced a little bit. I mean, she was 87 that time, I think 88. Anyway, so she did the shahada, and then she said, oh, don't tell anybody in the family. So I said, okay, don't worry. Actually, Email magazine came over and did an interview with her, just like you're doing. And so nobody mentioned it for a year. You know, I didn't mention it to anybody. And then I remember my brother was over, and we were having a discussion about, I think it was about burials or funerals, you know. And somehow it kind of slipped out about my mum, you know. And so then he told my mum's sisters and in Ireland, and yeah, so that was a bit tricky, you know. They didn't really like that. Yeah, she lived to 95 actually, and then I mean, she didn't really know hardly any of the prayers. Obviously, you know, she was quite frail, very frail. So, but you know, inshallah, she had a Muslim funeral actually, and my auntie came over, and we want the black and white answer. You know, you want a Christian or a Muslim funeral? And I remember she looked at me and she said, "What do you think?" I said, I'm not saying anything, up to you. And then she said, "Okay, Muslim." Well, actually, I went. She said, "Go down to the priest, local priest, and then ask him if he will come along and say a few words." So, you know, some multi, yeah. And so I went down to the house here, where the priest's house, and he basically closed the door in my face when I told him about this. Yeah. And I came back and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry," but when I told him the situation, he just closed the door. And Mum said, "Let him go, leave him." So we just had a straightforward contradictions in Christianity, which are very stressful, really, to like always be wondering what's going on, why are we here, and I mean, in Catholic religion, there's really no rules to do. You know, all the rules have disappeared over the years. Used to, you couldn't have pork, you couldn't drink alcohol, you couldn't do this, gambling. Now all these things have become halal, you know, for Catholics. So, you know, why were these rules put in place in the beginning, really? Because it was to improve people's life. And I think we do need to have some boundaries. So having these boundaries, you don't go out drinking, and obviously drugs and that sort of thing goes all out the window. I never did drugs anyway. But yeah, having boundaries and also meeting a whole community of Muslims was lovely, you know. And this, when you go down to the Regent's Park Mosque, for example, on 3:00 meetings, I met such lovely people, really, you know, and very touched by their kindness and by their generosity. The hospitality is lovely, and actually that was one of the first things that kind of made me think about the Islam religion. It's actually not the reading, it's the actions, which people say this like a cliche, but it's true. When I worked in Al-Ain, my neighbour was Sudanese. He used to, when the first day of Ramadan came, he knocked on my door and said, he actually, by the way, had 6 children in a 2-bedroom flat. And he said, "Come in, we're having iftar." So I said, "Whoa, okay." I didn't even know what iftar was particularly, but I knew it was fasting. And I went in the flat, and the flat was quite small, but the whole floor was covered in food. I said, "How did you manage? Where did your poor wife make all this food?" And so I enjoyed the hospitality. So, I mean, in the UK, we do have protected rights about worshipping. You can worship, you know, Scientologists. You can worship. Buddhism is fine. We do have this freedom. I've never felt any problem in Britain about you know, any persecution really as such. We're very lucky actually, because in many countries, if you say you're a Muslim, you can be treated very badly, and you know, you can have your house set on fire and that sort of thing. I mean, there's, you know, since 9/11, I suppose things started getting worse in some ways, but the number of Muslims in Britain now is what, 3.5, 4 million. It's such that I think the politicians are being careful not to attack it wholesale. I don't think there's a major problem in Britain, but the only thing is that some politicians, I mean, especially the recent government now, they have been talking about this jihadists, which is a word which I find very irritating. Like on the Gaza protests, they said, you know, it's been hijacked by jihadists. What was a jihadist? You know, also Islamists, another one. You know, can they define what is an Islamist? You know, so I think some politicians are trying to paint Islam in a bad way, but they're not doing it very well. And personally, I'm not worried about it. I don't think that Britain is going to become an Islamophobic nation as such, because I just don't think it's the culture of Britain really. I think people can see through it quite quickly. And on the Gaza marches, you see, I would say 3/4 of the people there are non-Muslim. You know, there's a large number of Muslims, but most of them are actually non-Muslim. And so, if they felt that, you know, it was all about, you know, the Palestinians are Muslims, and so are they supporting Muslims? Are they supporting the human beings? So, people in Britain, they see through these attacks. And ironically, most attacks coming on Islam are coming from Indian politicians like Suella Braverman, Priti Patel, and Rishi Sunak. Well, these are not Caucasian white people, are they? So they are from a background where they are quite nasty, actually. And I think that they will be kicked in the dustbin of history. So we shouldn't worry about them too much. So I believe this is going to go out in Ramadan. And I wish everybody Ramadan Mubarak. And of course, this period is a period of great joy for many Muslims. And I look forward to it, really. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say it, but I look forward to all the iftars because we go to different mosques. In Britain, we're very lucky that you can have like 20 mosques in your area and they're all doing different iftars, especially in London. So you might go to like Nigerian mosque and then you might go to a Turkish mosque and have a lovely iftar there, or you might go to Regent's Park and have some. So we have a really sport for choice, where in most other countries people eat at home. So if you're living on your own or you don't have any family, you're kind of, it's a little bit lonely. But in Britain, it's very much people come together in different mosques. Yeah. So it's obviously Ramadan is a kind of a time where you plug in and you recharge your batteries, really, as your car or your electric car or your phone is getting a bit low. You plug it in, and then it kind of regenerates the batteries, So.
So do you like the atmosphere in Ramadan?
I mean, of course, the atmosphere in the Middle East is different, but I mean, I would say that the atmosphere in London is fantastic as well. Yeah, you definitely. You don't need to be living in Egypt to enjoy the atmosphere, or in Saudi Arabia or Emirates. Although there is not, I do miss in the daytime. Over here, you go to past restaurants. And people are eating and drinking, and you think, "Oh, I would love some, kebab." So, in the Middle East, you can feel that in the daytime, everybody's in a different mode. They're quieter, which I miss that. But the wonderful taraweehs we have here, and we have the iftars is great. We just pray that this horrendous nightmare will be ended before Ramadan. I think even these barbaric politicians in Israel, sadistic, I would call them, they would see that continuing to bomb starving people in Ramadan when they're supposed to fast is not good PR for them. And we pray that the Palestinians are given their country and given their rights after this nightmare. They've given their blood, haven't they, for this. So far, that 40,000 people have died, which is just extraordinary. It must be, 2% of the entire population have been killed. Another 3 or 4% are left now injured. They're going to be crippled. They're going to be a burden on their families, which is what Israel wants. They want to have a country where people are not able to look after themselves. And that's why Israel has bombed schools, they've bombed the universities, because they want to destroy the structure of society. The fabric of society is being destroyed. And I think that Israel will come out of this as a loser eventually. Yeah, I mean, bombing hospital. I mean, I don't think any other war I've ever heard where they bombed. Did Russia bomb hospitals in Ukraine? Did they bomb hospitals? Did they bomb schools? Did they bomb clinics? This is not something which is in war. It's a dirty business to do this. It really is. I don't think Israel is doing any favors to itself. The history will judge them very, very harshly. Of course, we get WhatsApp pictures and stuff. Yes, still the people are there, and they will overcome. They will overcome this, I think. Yeah, and I think that the criminal politicians here as well, who are supporting this, and the criminals in Israel and America, they one day will be brought to justice. I think they'll be look back and say that they sat there and encouraged a Holocaust. Grassroots thing, of course, there's like on Saturdays they have this huge march of half a million or so in London, and also there's one in Manchester and other places. But I've noticed that an awful lot of support, which is coming from the grassroots, like there's the PSC, Palestine Solidarity Committee. They have a branch now open in Uxbridge. They have one in Hillingdon, one in Chelsea, I heard. So there's a huge influx now of people who now are very active, supporting Palestine now. It's like ignited a fire. And I'll just say, be careful when you buy your dates, because we go out looking at the box of dates, and if there's no country on the box, it's going to be Israel. I mean, I think Israel is the only country in the world where they're ashamed to put their name on their produce. So if you see no name, don't buy it. Stick to Zaytun and Jaffa, or the brands which you've done some investigation. But if there's no product name or no name of the country, 99% is going to be Israel.
So the boycott is...
So you have to boycott Israel, yeah. I mean, boycott BDS worked in Africa, South Africa. It took 30 years, and I think it may take 30 or 40 years here. But BDS actually works very, very well. Yeah. But it takes a long while, yeah.